Hey everybody, it's Brian with you from TheGameCommon, and today we are going to talk about Civilization 6 Gathering Storm. It is the newest expansion slash DLC announced for Civilization 6. They just announced it today. They ended up releasing about a 2.5 minute opening cutscene for the game, which I'll put a link to this video in the description below. You guys can watch that. In addition to that, then they ended up having about a little over an hour long live stream with some of the developers, and they're basically talking about the different features of the game and stuff like that, and we're going to go over all those features. And then they also released 5 pictures, I think, for the game, and basically we're going to basically talk about some of the things that we can see in the picture that they didn't actually announce in the feature video. So essentially this is going to be kind of the breakdown of this video. Number one, I want to talk about all of the official announcements for the expansion, everything, all the features that we know that they actually talked about that we know is going to be in the game. We're going to start with that. From there, then I want to kind of pull out some of the stuff that we can kind of extrapolate from some of the pictures in the video of things that we're going to know that are in the game. For example, we can tell from this little thing here that the Incas are in the game, and then also too, even right here, we can see that the Incas are clearly in the game because, I mean, my gosh, they have a video of them. So, you know, we're going to talk about that stuff. And then lastly, I want to talk about some of the leaks. So they're on the subreddit today for Civ, there was a couple leaks of some of the features in the game that they didn't announce. The leaks thus far for Civilization 6, all the stuff for this expansion have been spot on thus far. So I'm pretty confident in talking about those as if they're going to actually happen. The one thing I should mention though is there is definitely a chance that everything we talk about today might change between now and the next couple weeks, or they might announce things and we find out the leaks are different, or that we extrapolated something completely different, you know. So this video might become pretty dated, but for now, you know, this is everything we know, and this is kind of all the logical and conclusions we can kind of draw from the game. So first and foremost, we should talk about the release date. They announced the release date as February 14th, 2019. So that's Valentine's Day. So yeah, Emily, my wife, is going to absolutely love me, but that's going to be the official release date. I imagine, you know, most of the times they release like, what is it, 12 p.m. Eastern. So, you know, maybe I'll be able to play some of this before my wife gets super mad at me, but that's the release date. Other thing I want to talk about is, so this one, as you can kind of tell from the volcano back here, it has a natural disaster theme. So I want to kind of give their vision that they kind of talked about today. So their vision with this expansion pack is they really wanted the map to change. So right now, when you play Civilization 6, the map you kind of start with is kind of the map that's there for rest of the game. For example, if you started the game, you typed in, you know, tilde, and then you typed in reveal all, you revealed the entire map, and you could see all the different tiles and everything like that. You know, that map is always going to be the same every single time you play a game of Civilization 6. Well, they didn't want that. So that's why they introduced the new kind of natural disaster features where, you know, you could have a volcano explode and then it starts changing the tiles around it. So for example, if you build a bunch of improvements right around the volcano, you know, sure, the volcano might start destroying some of those tiles, but then it also might start changing some of the yields around the tiles as well, because, you know, volcanoes tend to have extremely fertile soil. The other thing is, you know, a river, and we can actually go find this here because they actually had a river that was near their initial city that actually flooded. I should have wrote down the times on this. I wrote down the times for most of this, but the river actually changed the yields of the tile. We're way too late now at this point, but it actually changed. Yeah, there you go. So you can see that the river actually flooded here, and so you'll notice that every one of these tiles here is a little bit of a darker color green, also up there, and basically that's kind of now a visual cue, so you know, hey, guess what? This tile might flood, or this river might actually flood. So I guess what you can assume then is not every single river will flood, you know, just, I guess the same way that not every single mountain is going to turn into a volcano. You can also see a volcano there. And so they talked about like there being a risk reward system. So you say, hey, I'm going to put a city here, you know, straight up, guess what? Hey, eventually some of these tiles might start flooding, and that might destroy improvements that we have. But then there's also positive from it too, where they'll actually change the yields of the tiles. And if we can actually jump forward here a little bit, there we go. You'll actually see that this is a 2-1 tile, that's a 1-2 tile. Now, when they started the game, this was a 1-1 tile, and that was also a 1-1 tile. But after the river flooded, these tiles actually changed. So that one gained 1 production, that one gained 1 food. And I think one other one changed as well. That one must have been a 1-1 that also became a 2-1. And so they actually now have, it's at 4029. By the way, I'm doing this in Premiere because it's a little easier for me to find stuff. But they now added this new World Climate tab, which you can kind of see everything that's going on. You can look at event histories and you can see the overview. And you'll notice that every one of these natural disasters has a percentage chance. So river flooding has a 37% chance, storms have a 29% chance, droughts have a 15% chance, volcanic activity has a 9% chance, and I'm assuming that adds up. That doesn't add up to 100. So I don't know exactly where they pull those numbers from, but I do know that the players have a chance to slowly change those. They mentioned that droughts, for example, if you start ripping up a bunch of forest tiles, they're more likely to occur because basically the droughts are looking for tiles that don't have any natural stuff on it, like any forest or stuff like that. So if you have 5 or 6 tiles right next to each other that don't have any forest or rainforest or something like that, you're more likely to get a drought. So I guess they're kind of maybe nerfing some of the chopping that's going on in the game. But with the river flooding, the storms, I don't know if any of this stuff you can actually change the percentage or if it just happens in the game or whatnot. But anyways, you can then look at the event history and you can even see here that there was a 1,000-year flood. So over in China, the Amur River flooded and it basically changed the improvements or changed the pips on 3 of the tiles. So 3 of the tiles basically are now slightly different. 2 improvements were destroyed. So China had 2 improvements that were destroyed because of the flood, and then 1 unit was killed. So anytime a river floods, they said a couple things could happen. Number 1, if you have a city, the city could take damage. If you have walls, the walls could take damage. If you have a military unit there, the military unit could take damage. If you have a civilian unit, the civilian unit doesn't have HP, so it would just instantly die. If you have any improvements, the improvements might also be destroyed as well. Now, there is stuff that you can build to kind of negate that later game. They said that you could build canals. I think it was straight canals, right? Flood Valley, garrison civilian units can be destroyed. Where was it? Chopping forest, iron deposits. I took a lot of notes on this live stream, so it's kind of like just me trying to find them. But I think they said it was canals that you could actually build then. And so then those canals would actually stop the flooding from happening, or you could at least control it a little better. So you'd be able to get all the improvements from the flood. So so your tiles would get, they would get more pips, but you wouldn't have any of the devastation. And that's kind of true as well, because earlier we saw, well, we didn't see it yet, but in the video they showed some flooding, and you can see it's like some seawalls basically to stop the floods. And so essentially, once again, I'm just kind of assuming that you can basically just stop some coastal cities from getting flooded. So now that was, and let's go back here, is 40. So that was all natural stuff. Now there's also climate change in the game. And so basically the more iron you use, the more oil you use, the more non-renewable energy you use, which is now also in the game, energy. So that's a new resource. But basically the more of that stuff you use, the more you contribute to climate change. And the more climate change there is, the more chances then that the polar ice caps will melt and that the sea level will actually go up. So they actually mentioned that now there's a strategy where if, let's say, you're only inland and none of your cities are on the sea, you might then decide to start burning as much coal and oil and stuff as possible so you can actually contribute to climate change and then start melting the polar ice caps so that all of your enemies who are all on the sea all their cities start getting flooded, which is freaking awesome. Like, I love that. I think that's so cool. The other thing I should mention about all this is they actually said there were 4 or 5 different settings before you started the game, basically to tune how much you want these natural disasters to happen. So they said if you cranked it up all the way and you're playing on like quick speed, you're basically going to have a natural disaster almost every turn, which is kind of crazy. But then the other thing is you could turn it down, and they're probably hearing from the loyalty system where a lot of people don't necessarily enjoy it, where they're tuning it so if you just find it annoying, you don't necessarily have to worry about it. But generally, I think it's pretty cool. I mean, obviously it's going to be annoying to get some of your tiles destroyed, but the fact that you actually get a benefit from it is kind of cool. And more than that, you kind of know beforehand. Like, you'll know the river tiles, you'll know desert tiles might have sandstorms, you'll know volcano tiles obviously might blow up on you. So you kind of go into it with a little bit of knowledge, knowing, hey, this might be a bad idea to colonize or settle right here. But you know what? The risk is totally worth the reward. So let's also now go over some of the other features they announced. Let's see. So they did talk about renewable energy and power, so that's a new resource in the game. They also said that they completely reworked strategic resources. Now, we didn't actually really get a chance to see any strategic resources. I think he was researching iron at the end, but I don't think we actually saw any of the iron. But essentially, it works slightly different now, where instead of having like 1 iron that you get to use rest of the game to build units, or 2 iron rest of the game you get to build units, essentially, if you have an iron mine, it will generate you 2 iron per turn. And I should note, I am not from Firaxis. I don't know anyone there. I don't have any insider information. This is just me listening to their live stream and kind of like talking about it. You can see some iron over there. And so basically he said that any mine is going to generate you 2 iron per turn, and now when you go to build swordsmen, they're going to cost X amount of iron instead of just like having 1 iron that allows you to build infinite amounts. Now you actually have to use exact amounts of iron. So for example, swordsman might cost you 30 iron, so you might need an iron mine for 15 turns before you can build a swordsman. You know, something along those lines. He also mentioned England, who they actually changed how England works yet again. But they said now England, with one of their special updates now, they can actually get 3 iron per turn from the iron mines, which is, you know, kind of cool. So that's not how strategic resources work, which is interesting because let's say you have iron early in the game and you build up a giant surplus of iron, you can then trade it away to someone else who might still need that iron because you don't. One other thing to mention about this is they did talk about cheaper resources versus more expensive resources, and I think they were purely talking about energy with renewable energy versus like coal and oil, and they basically said like the cheaper resources like coal and oil are more likely to create climate change than renewable. So we know that there are wind, we know that there's wind, we know that there's geothermic, and we also know that there's also dams that you can build as well. So that's all technically clean energy, which is, you know, going to be less likely to produce global warming, but you know, you might end up not having access to it, or you might just not want to spend the money for that. So instead you go with cheaper stuff like oil and stuff like that. You can actually even see wind farms over there, so we have to know that those are in the game then. Other thing they mentioned are flood barriers, and I'm trying to think, are there any flood barriers here? I don't see any flood barriers, but in one of the pictures that we're going to talk about, we can actually see the flood barriers. You can actually see it up there, and then as we showed earlier in the game in that opening cutscene, there was also flood barriers there as well, and we can actually just go ahead and play this. We'll talk about a little more of this here in a little bit. Where was the flood barriers? Oh, there it was. So anyways, so here's one of the hurricanes. I'm assuming this is what it is, you know, telling us that there is, and then here comes the flood barriers. Now, what's interesting with the flood barriers, I think those are going to be primarily for as the sea rises, as we get later and later and climate change becomes more and more of a thing. But if we notice here, look at how they built this flood barrier. So you can see that there's cliffs all around here, and then all of a sudden they built the flood barrier over there to the mountain. So what I'm kind of assuming, and I know we're getting to the extrapolations long before I said we're going to this was going to happen, but I'm pretty sure what this means is that if you have stuff on cliffs, you don't need to worry about building the flood barriers. Although what we don't know is, can the water eventually reach over the flood barriers? Like, can it ever get so bad that even if you built a flood barrier, all of this will get flooded? I don't actually know. But what it seems like then is that the flood barriers are more for like the coastal tiles that have like the beaches and stuff like that, which is pretty interesting because now it gives a whole nother reason to have cliffs or to put cities on cliffs as well. Another thing they added, colorblind mode. So they basically ended up changing all of the colors for all of the civs. They said that they were having a hard time because so many civs were using the same kind of colors, and so that was creating some crazy different things where, like, you know, England, for example, didn't necessarily have the right color red and stuff like that. And so essentially what they now have done is they have reworked every civ's colors. And then what they've also done is they've given them alternate colors. So for example, if you're playing as London, or as England rather, you're going to have the typical England colors. But if, for example, England's in your game and someone else has red as well, there's a chance then that England might have one of the alternate color palettes, which is kind of interesting because one of the main things in the game is, you know, anytime you see someone's colors, you're always like, at least in Civ 6, you can pretty much figure out who you're next to because you can see the colors of their borders. So now if the fact that their colors might actually change, that makes it a little harder at quick glance to kind of figure out who's who. So for the most part, China looks a little bit different. England actually looks a little orange, but I think part of that was just the colors they were using with Twitch and stuff like that. And then Zulu was also in the game, who looked pretty much the exact same. And then they met Gitarja at the end, but I don't know if we ever saw Gitarja's Guitarja at all. Yeah, she looks mostly like the same color as well down there. It also looks like you can increase the size of the minimap, which is cool. And then they also changed the minimap as well, so it looks a little different as well. Other thing, they now added build queues. Woot! So we don't have to use CQUI if you don't want to anymore. So that's 43. What did I say? 4355. So let's see. I think we can actually type it in. But anyways, show queue. So that's really cool. They said that it took them a little bit of time to add in the queue, but what's nice now is they have a master screen that has the build queues for your entire empire. So you can pull it up, and let's say you have 20 cities, you can pull up the build queue and see what every single one of your cities is working on. What's also cool about that, let's say it's pretty late game, and let's say someone declares war on you, you can pull up the build queue, the master build queue, and then switch everyone to tanks, which is really, really freaking cool. So I'm so excited that they added this back into the game. This is super exciting. They said that it works with districts and stuff now too, so we'll have to see how that actually works. Other thing they added, new historical moments, 45. So let's see, there we go. So now they actually added an era score because emperors of England are the first from a major civilization to set foot in the continent of Pangaea, so they got +4 for settling on that, but then they also got +1 era score because they settled right next to a river that might flood. Now, not every river will flood, and I don't think I pointed this out earlier, but I think we did. But anyways, you can see these river tiles, they kind of have like the floodplain icon. That kind of gives you a cue that, hey, guess what? This tile might flood. So not every river will necessarily flood, so you're not going to necessarily get that every single time you settle next to something that might flood. But I'm assuming anytime you're within range of like a volcano or a flooding river, maybe even the coast, I don't know, you might get more era score from that. Other thing they ended up switching around a little bit is they changed the whole governments now too as well. So now the governments, or the governors rather, not the governments. They did change the governments, but we'll get to that in a second. So the governors, they ended up switching some of these around. Some of the promotions are now in with different people. So for example, arms race proponent, which I think was in Ping before, right, is now over in Victor. Kind of makes a little more thematic sense. You know, I think curator was in Reina before, and so now it's over in Ping, which makes a lot more sense. And you know, so they kind of switched some of that around, and then they also changed how some of the promotion works. So Ling now, for example, has reinforced materials. The city improvements, buildings, and districts cannot be damaged by environmental effects. That sounds amazing. Put freaking Ling right next to a volcano that's supposed to explode. Oh yes, heck yeah. And then Magnus changed a little bit too. Now provisions no longer gives a bonus towards industrial zones. Instead, you got industrialist over here, which actually gives you increased production. And now provision only basically keeps you from losing a population with the settlers. So not only did they change some of these around, but they actually changed how some of those works, which awesome. I think these make so much more sense now, at least from the ones I've seen. They've also added in 3 late new government types. And so I should mention this, they ended up extending the timeline, and this was probably something I wanted them to do, and when they announced it, I was so excited. Actually, when we got to the end of the opening cutscene, and all of a sudden, let's go here, and all of a sudden we got right here, I was like, they did it! They actually did it! Because this looks so late game, I was like, they had to do it. So they said that they actually added a whole nother era at the end of the game, and so because of that, now we have a bunch of late game techs and late game civics that we didn't have before. So that means they had to rework all of the victory types and stuff like that. And that's probably part of the reason why we hadn't heard anything from them. And I mean, we've been talking about this in our live streams the last couple weeks, anytime we talked about Civ 6, is the fact that we hadn't heard anything from them in so long, from Firaxis that is. It was like, yeah, they have to be reworking something major. You know that something major is coming. And this must have been what's it. So they ended up adding a bunch of new techs. And you can see they actually have 3 new government types there as well. Now, a little bit later, one of the leaks is actually listing off what these government types are, but they didn't actually show them to us. But we do know that they now have tier 4 governments, which is really, really awesome. We didn't really get to see any of the civics. None of that seemed any new. They didn't show any of the tech tree or any of the civic tree. Also, all the policies, none of those looked any different as well from what I saw. The one thing, though, that I did want to say is... Oh yeah, the thing that they also said is that they actually changed now the science. So that last era in science now, the techs are actually completely randomized. I don't know if they went straight random like Stellaris is a good example where the techs are completely random. But basically what they mentioned is, like, for example, you might need certain, and I'm kind of assuming this here, but you might need certain space parts for like a rocket ship that you're sending off to Alpha Centauri. Well, it might not be with the same tech. Like they might change some of the different effects for some of the late game sciences. They basically, all they said was that it's a little randomized now, which I think is pretty cool. I think that's a good change. I love that in Stellaris. Other thing that they added, they said that they reworked the warmongering system. And in fact, as we can see over, if we talk to Zulu here, let's see, we actually clicked on Zulu. Where was that? That was right after we met Zulu. Here we go. It's an honor to meet you. Okay, so right here, you'll notice that now there's grievances. So they basically completely changed diplomatic. One of the things that they added is they added in new victory types. Specifically, the first and foremost one is diplomatic victory. That is probably the most exciting new change. I can't wait to do it. Diplomatic victory is one of my favorite types in Civ 5. But then this thing right here actually represents your diplomatic favors. So in the game, you can actually trade favors, but you could also keep promises with people around you by not settling their cities, not converting their cities and stuff like that. And all of that stuff gets you diplomatic favors. Then those favors you can cash in eventually to win the game. You can also cash those in the World Congress to basically get people to vote for the things you want. Or even now the whole emergency system that we had before in Civ 6, it now all works through the World Congress. So for example, if someone changes the religion of your holy city, you can actually then say, hey, we need to do an emergency here, and everyone in the world is going to vote on that. Now, if you have enough diplomatic favors, you can actually make them vote for you. If not, then, that's not going to necessarily work. So they didn't really say how the warmongering stuff was going to work, other than now you get grievances, which seems to kind of counteract a little bit. I don't know if, for example, this is just going to tick down if you have grievances, or exactly how that works. We'll have to kind of see in the future. One thing to note, though, is let's say you have like 250, and I don't know what the number is, but let's say you have 250 diplomatic favors, and you're like, yay, we can totally go out. If one of your neighbors has 150 diplomatic favors, they might be able to convince people to not vote for you because they have enough favors. And so I'm kind of interested to see if it's like a bidding system or something like that. So we'll have to see how that works out. But that was a pretty cool new change. The other thing I should mention, and this is a little more in the extrapolated, but they actually said, she actually asked what was their favorite new features that were in the game. And one of them said that it was the victory types. And he said types as in, actually said new victory types as in plural. So they announced the diplomatic victory, but there might actually be other victory types in the game. I don't know. He might just have been referring to the fact that they changed cultural victory and science victory and how all those work, but maybe there actually is more than just diplomatic victory. We'll have to see. I'm excited to see about that. Other things that are new, they also announced the new district, which is a dam. The dam you can build right on your rivers to basically, like I mentioned earlier, that's what basically gives you all the benefits without having to worry about your city flooding. And then they also added in Russian blizzards. So Russia, one of their new upgrades for their civilization is if you, anytime there's a blizzard, I guess units normally take damage. Unless you're Russia, you don't take damage from blizzards. And I guess anyone declaring war on Russia now takes additional damage from blizzards. That was pretty cool. And then lastly, they added in the freaking Hall of Fame again. So we get the Hall of Fame back from Civ 5 so we can compare our games, which is cool. I'm excited for that. And then I think everything else we talked about. Timeline's extended, late game tech is randomized, different colors for England. Oh, yeah. That was another thing early on. So you'll notice that the rivers actually have names. And so apparently the rivers and the mountain ranges and stuff like that all get names. And anytime you found them, it basically gives it a name based on your civilization. So you can actually go run across a river that already has a name, and then if you know enough about geography, for example, it's the Nile, hey, Egypt's somewhere over here, or Egypt found that first, which is kind of cool. Now, they mentioned that you could actually name it. I don't know, there was never any option here to actually name it themselves, so I don't actually know if you can actually give it your own name, because they said you could, but everything I read kind of explains it as it just naturally gives you a name based on whatever your civ is, so we'll see on that. Other thing is they have geothermal now. Hey, perfect timing. So this is a new thing that they have. This basically gives you science early game. Later on, you can actually have geothermal. You can actually put an aqueduct, and aqueducts, I guess, now that have access to geothermal, actually have additional housing, which is cool, which, I love that. Aqueducts needed a boost, so it seems like they did that. And then eventually you can build a geothermic power plant in it. And we can actually see that from one of the pictures, and I don't remember which picture it was. Right here. You can actually see the geothermic power plant. So that actually will generate you power per turn, and that's clean power, so that's good to know. Then they said World Congress is back. We talked, they have the emergency systems, and then every 30 turns, there's the normal Congress. And like it worked out in Civ 5, you can do things like ban resources, you can promote resources, you can say, hey, no one's allowed to tear up any forest. Or you can say, hey, no one's allowed to trade bananas or work bananas or work iron or stuff like that. And so then that kind of gets to the point where, you know, for example, let's say you're kind of trying to blow up the world by working as much coal as possible, and you basically want to melt the ice caps and stuff like that. You know, they might, in the World Congress, all your opponents might vote to say, hey, we're only using renewable energy now, and that could really screw you depending on how that works. So that's kind of a cool new feature. Other thing we should mention, and I didn't write this down at all, but they said that as the ice caps melt, it actually gives you new pathfinding options, new areas that you can now explore, and we can actually see this in one of the screenshots. Yeah, you can actually see up here. So I don't know if I think it was Civ 5, maybe it was Civ 4, you could actually not have any of the ice, and you could actually then access the top of the map from the bottom of the map and vice versa, kind of like how you can go from all the way left and right. I don't know if you can now transverse it as some of this ice melts from bottom to top and top to bottom. I don't know, that would be really cool. Or if what will happen is some of these these icebergs will melt and you can now just pathfind through areas you couldn't pathfind before. Either way, it's pretty cool. Let's see, anything else we need to talk about real quick? Grievances, first turn delegation. Oh yeah, okay. So that was all the official announced stuff. So now let's actually get into some of the stuff that I'm kind of extrapolating. So the first one we're going to find at 2957. They didn't talk at all about this, but I found this really interesting. So he ends up meeting Zulu here, pretty standard. We're going to go forward a little bit. He says it's an honor to meet you. And then number one, look, delegation now only costs 10 gold. It used to cost 25 gold. So number one, they reduced the cost of delegations, but this is the very first turn he met the Zulu, and the Zulu said no. Now, I don't remember Zulu well enough that Zulu always says no, but as far as I remember, everyone should always accept your delegation the first turn that happens, right? So that maybe is a change now where you can't instantly get the delegations. You actually have to get people to like you before they'll trade delegations. So that's a rather interesting change. The other thing I kind of extrapolated from this was Antarctica. So in the whole beginning cutscene, they start in Antarctica, and they're sitting there exploring Antarctica. To me, this sounds as if we might actually have Antarctica and we might actually be able to maybe build on Antarctica. I don't really know. The one interesting thing is we have the research station now as a wonder in the game, and that research station is actually built in Antarctica. So this kind of makes me wonder, can you actually maybe explore some of those ice tiles? Can you actually put a research station there? Or maybe all this is doing is just showing the fact that climate change is happening and that the icebergs are changing. I don't know. But, you know, I was kind of wondering that. Then here we see the World Congress. Let's see. Here we see Pompeii. So we see the volcanoes happening. And we see an earthquake happening, which they didn't talk about earthquakes at all. Yeah, they didn't talk about earthquakes at all. So that's kind of interesting to note. And you can see people dying on that. Then you see the Incas there, which is going to be one of the new civs, guaranteed. We can basically just extrapolate that right away because the Incas are there. They're also there right at the way end on the cutscene, on this last picture. Go back. No. Go back. Right there. You can see the Inca tiles are there. So we can pretty much guarantee you that the Incas are in there as well. And then the other thing, 3825. There's apparently, and I don't know what this is, but let's go hover over it real quick. 3825. And you guys are going to have to help me with this. So 3825, he starts building a campus. And I was looking at some of the improvements, or basically what gives you extra science. And you notice everything here looks the exact same. Snow, mountain tiles, adjacent rainforest, addition districts, government plaza, geothermal, nice. But then look, the Pamukkale tile. And I ended up Googling this because I was like, what the heck is that? And we can look at the Pamukkale, whatever. It's a town in western Turkey known for the mineral-rich thermal waters. So I don't know if this is just a natural wonder that might happen that's in the game. I don't know because it's in Turkey if this is guaranteeing that Ottomans are actually in the game, and maybe this is like one of their first cities actually gets this. I don't know. But this might just be a natural wonder that's in the game. But what's interesting about this is it doesn't actually say anything about any of the other natural wonders. So maybe that's the only natural wonder then that gives you additional science. I don't know. But I saw that, and that was also too with one of the other improvements. I think it maybe was the commercial zone also got a bonus for as well. I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look, but one of the other districts also got a bonus for that. Other thing too, canals are in the game, and I didn't announce this before as the official stuff, but Panama Canal is actually a wonder, and then canals are also in the game as well. And anytime you build a city now on a coast, it actually gives you that kind of canal artwork. And so one of the achievements for the game is actually making a 5-tile wide canal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so theoretically, you could put another city here, and anytime you throw a city on the river, it's going to give you that one tile canal. You can also then build a district canal as well. So you could build district canal there, and then this third tile here in the middle, you could actually build the Panama Canal Wonder. And so then you would actually have a 5-tile wide canal that would basically connect 2 bodies of water. That's freaking awesome. So I'm really, really excited for that. Anything else that we want to extrapolate? No. So then let's just kind of glance through this stuff and see everything else. We do have a new leader here. I think this is Mali. We'll talk about those guys in a second. Here's Panama Canal right there. That's when I was going to talk about it. And then we see all this stuff here. So then that's where the stuff starts. Let's go ahead and look at the pictures then real quick. So this is the #1 picture that they released. You can see right here, Golden Gate Bridge is clearly one of the new wonders in the game. I think it's going to be really, really cool. I don't know. We'll have to see how it actually works out. Some of the other things, though, that you'll notice over here is right down here, we have a ski lodge. Is this now an improvement now that you can build on mountain tiles? I don't know. I actually think this might be something to do with culture and trying to get enough tourism. So this might just be another tourism. And it would make sense because right now all you could do is seaside resorts. So it would be kind of nice to have the mountain tiles now as well, where you could build on them to also get extra culture. This is one of the new districts. We have no idea what it does yet. It looks really, really cool. It's definitely future tech. And then let's see. Let's just kind of glance through there. Geothermal. We can see that rockets are still in the game. My assumption is Science Victory. They're probably going to make it so that the last thing you have to do is maybe send a rocket to Alpha Centauri, because that was kind of always the Science Victory. So you might still have to have a habitat on Mars, and then you send a rocket over to Alpha Centauri. You can see the canals over there. Holy Site here. That looks mostly unchanged. This is, I have no idea. Yeah, this one I don't know. This looks like something, but that looks really, really cool. If you guys know, let me know. We talked about that already. You can see the solar farm over here, so this is definitely clearly solar farm power. You also got wind over there. It also looks like they added an additional building over here to this, which would make sense because remember, there is an additional era now, so there should also probably be a new building in here as well. I don't know if that's what those are, but we can assume that there's probably new buildings per district. Yeah, that also looks new as well. Broadway's still in the game, obviously. There's also a new building here, although some people are kind of extrapolating. Actually, I think it's this one, right? No, it's got to be those. Maybe this is a coal mine or something like that. We got the airport over there. We got another one of the solar powers. You can see the dam over there. We'll get a better picture of that. There's a neighborhood, and then there's another seawall over there in the distance. So that's one of the pictures. Is this the last one? Whoopsie. Is this the last one? Yeah, it is. So let's go back and let's look at the rest of the pictures and see. Here you get a better picture of the canals. So this is a, 1, 2, 3 tile wide canal. So one of these has to be the Panama Canal. And then one of these actually has to be the Canal District. So that's kind of cool. There's definitely, that looks like new artwork there as well. There's also now railroad in the game. In, what was it, Civ 5, you could upgrade roads to railroads. Maybe that was Civ 4. And so I don't know if it's going to work the same way where you can actually upgrade your roads, or maybe the roads just naturally upgrade like they do already, and like the late game ones are just railroads. But what's cool is you can now use engineers to actually tunnel through mountains, and you can take roads and railroads through the mountains, which is cool because now, before, if all of a sudden you had an area that was completely boxed off by mountains, now you can actually tunnel through it so your units can pass through, which is really, really, really awesome. And then that looks like, I think this is the Venetian Arsenal, right? That's what that one looks like. I don't think that one's any different. So that's this picture over here. I don't think there's anything else over here. You can kind of see the canal over there. You can see another dam there, which is quite nice. Everything else, man, this game looks good. I love the artwork. It looks so pretty, so pretty, so pretty. There's our aqueducts. Continue on. You can see there's 2 volcanoes here. Now, this is one of the natural wonder volcanoes, and they actually said that this one's even like better than a regular volcano. Like this one's like crazy good is what they said. So excited to see how that one actually works out. We got the commercial hub there. We got a dock with the water mill or the lighthouse over there. Everything else here other than other than the dam looks pretty standard. I don't know if the dam actually helps with flooding. That'll be intriguing to see as the game goes forward. And then lastly, this is our last one here. You can see the volcano exploding. You can see that the wonders aren't damaged. Wonders don't get damaged. Districts and stuff will get damaged, so you have to repair them. And like I mentioned before, units might get killed and stuff like that. So that's pretty much, I think, everything I want to talk about the game. Oh yeah, and the other thing I want to talk about is some of the rumors. So before we get too far, let's talk about some of the rumors. So this was released on the subreddit today. They basically said that the new civs are going to be Sweden, Hungary, Inca, Ottomans, the Mali, the Morai, I think is how you say it, the Phoenicians, and Canada, which is interesting, within an alt leader for Eleanor, who belongs to both France and England, which is really, really, really cool. What's interesting about this is Dido actually was in Civ 5, but she was with Carthage, so I don't know if they're going to switch Carthage from a city-state now, or if maybe the Phoenicians, maybe their capital will be Carthage. We'll kind of have to see how that works. So that was some of those features that they talked about. Lastly, they also said that climate change, natural disasters are in, which we knew about. 3 new future era government types, so they named them as corporate libertarianism, digital democracy, and technocracy. And this one has a science, this is culture, and then that's domination theme. So it'll be interesting if, you know, if you're doing domination victory, if you have to go with that one, or if that gives you a boost towards domination victory. We'll have to see how that works. Then World Congress, which we talked about, electricity, which we talked about, strategic resources are overhauled, which they announced, and the new wonders, natural wonders, awesome, and then posted images and pics related. So we kind of get an idea there. We could definitely tell that the Incas were in the game. The Ottomans, we kind of also kind of thought were in the game because of some earlier leaks, and then the Mali definitely seemed like the guys on the ship, so that seems all pretty reliable. I'm really, 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 really excited for this. It sounds really, really cool. It has pretty much everything I was hoping for. It added on extra tech, which I think is going to be absolutely wonderful. It adds canals to the game, which is going to be wonderful. The natural disasters, obviously it sounds like it could be a little annoying, maybe like the loyalty, but I think the fact that you can tune it is great, number one, but then number two, the fact that you get benefits. Okay, yeah, it's going to suck if all your improvements get destroyed, or let's say you lose a unit or something like that, but still, you know what, it's going to be really, really cool just to have tiles change, and the fact that you can actually get tiles better and better as the game progresses, I think is going to change things tremendously. And then the whole natural disaster screen that you can actually see what the natural disasters were. Like, really what I think, and they said something about this, is it just kind of adds stories to your game. And I think that's what's so cool about it. Like, I started playing CK2 again here with the Holy Fury update, and it's just been really cool just kind of telling a story as, like, the game progresses. And I think that's really what they're achieving well with this, is we're going to get some pretty crazy stories here, where guess what? We settled next to a volcano that exploded and killed half my population. But you know what? Because of that, we ended up getting really fertile tile, which allowed us to catch up and blah, blah, blah. Like, we're going to be able to get stories that that come from it. Or, you know, eventually we're going to run across China and we'll find that China got absolutely wrecked by floods. And, you know, that's going to be really cool to find out. I think there's just so many cool changes that's going to be really, really awesome. By the way, I did mention earlier, they said that they changed quite a few of the civs. England was the first civ that they worked. There's some updates on that online. I should actually just downloaded the picture of it. But basically, they pretty much reworked her completely, which is really, really, really exciting. They did change her not too long ago. When was that? Like the spring patch of 2018. But she was still pretty weak even after that. So I think she's going to be a lot better now because she's going to get a lot of extra production. The other thing too is now she gets free naval units anytime she builds a dock. I think anytime she builds a Royal Naval Dockyard, she gets a free naval unit, which is like, what? So that's pretty cool. And instead of, what was it, just a melee unit, I think is what it was before. So anyways, that's everything that is happening. That's pretty much everything that happened in the live stream. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If there's anything I missed or anything that has been released since then, let me know. Drop a comment and, you know, let's have a discussion about this in the comments. Also, too, I'm on Discord. You know, by all means, I'd love to have more discussions about this in Discord, too. So I'm really, really excited for this. We're going to play the crap out of it when it comes out on February 14th. We're going to keep playing Civ 6 until then. So anyways, I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.